Ba, 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 ba. They should be able to hear us. What's up, everybody? Let us know if you can hear us. It's been a hot minute, y'all. So good to see so many familiar usernames in the chat, but also so many first time chatters. Ben I shouldn't have started with that one. Rothfer. That was a hard one too. That chaos, huh? Alan F02. Welcome, first time chatters. Welcome, long time ratters. My name is Lena Vashinsky. I am an associate art director here at Riot Games, and I'm here with a bunch of wonderful rats. And we are here to talk today about demo reel reviews. But before we dive in, something we didn't talk about was intros. We didn't pick an order, so we got to just do it to it. I Let's start out with intros, and then I'll talk a little bit through the day and a couple little announcements because I realized I forgot to update some visuals on the old stream. So, rats, do y'all want to introduce yourselves, please?
Let's go clockwise. All right, Kevin, you go first.
I'm at the bottom though. Oh, I guess I'm on top. Hey, I'm Kevin. I'm an animator here at Riot. Ben is a student of mine right now at iAnimate. Hi, Ben. And I've been here for 3 years.
Brendan, you're
Yes.
next.
Oh, I like that Tyler's moderating. I'm Brendan. I am an animator on Valorant. I've been here for a little over 3 years, and I'm just happy to be here.
Hell yeah.
I'm Tyler. I work on League. I'm a rat. All right, JT, you're next.
Yeah, I'm JT. I also work on League skins. I've been here for 2 years.
Skylar, go ahead.
I believe I'm next. Hey, I'm Skylar. I've been around a long time. I work in R&D. I've worked on a bunch of unannounced titles and League of Legends from back in the day. That's me. I'm principal animator. Next.
Anthony, you're the last one.
Okay, hello. I'm a mid animator on TFT. Mid. Yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Really embracing that level. We love to see it. Well, everybody, he's like mid, but he's like the least mid that you've ever met. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Well, everybody, we're super happy to be back. We had a bit of a slow end of the year stream wise, but we fully intend to make that not the norm. And we're really excited to start off the new year with something a little different. We sort of, if you've just joining us, which so many first time chatters, it's great to see you. And also, thanks for the birthday wishes, everybody. That's very sweet. The intent of what we do here is we do a lot of demo reel reviews where we actually source reviews from y'all, and you send us your demo reels, your pieces, and we review as many as we can in like an hour and a half or so. Sometimes we'll have discussions, or we'll like bring our favorite games and things we want to chat about that we're excited about. And sometimes we try and do like educational things that are just general, how you can be prepared for opportunities if you're a prospective animator, if you're looking to make a career change or anything like that. So today we're sort of sitting firmly in that category. If you want to suggest ideas for streams that we can do or just generally be a part of the community, I know that lots of folks, Brendan, Tyler, JT, are super good at being in the Discord and answering questions. So our Discord link is right up tippy top. I'm always a bit quiet compared to the others, so I'll adjust that. We are also now on Blue Sky. I know what animals in the top are. We are on Blue Sky. We are rat animators on Blue Sky. So if you want to follow us on social media, that is our preferred social media for you to follow, and actually the only place that we will be posting. So a little update from us. And with that, today we are talking about demo reels in 2025. It's something that, when we have open roles, it's something we want to talk about, and especially because we see like common errors. I think we've done demo reel things in the past where we talk about compositionally and like how you sort of structure it. And so in order to try and get something a little bit different and get more information to y'all about things that kind of come up, we had a rat meeting where we talked about kind of like, what questions do people not usually ask us about demo reels or things that we don't usually see? So we're going to start with a bit of discussion, and then a little bit later we're going to move in to reviewing some of the demo reels that got some of these fine folks jobs at Riot Games, and specifically at different levels. So we have a representative of an associate level demo reel, a mid-level demo reel, a senior level demo reel, and a principal level demo reel for review that we will go into a little bit later. So I hope y'all are happy, and I hope you're excited to get into it. I would love, there's some preliminary rats in the chat for a little bit of animation stream hype, and we'll dive right in. Great. Rats. I think we'll start with a sort of discussion topic here. That is the question that we usually get is, what are you looking for? What are you looking for in a demo reel? And while I don't intend to stay in exactly this part of it for a long time, I'd love to start there. Just like a high level, what are you looking for? If you had to give a one sentence answer, what are you looking for in a demo reel?
I'll give you one word: creativity.
Short and sweet, baby.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I'll also say creativity. I'm going to say more than one word though. It's a competitive field, and a lot of people can do really high quality work. So when you see something that surprises you or is exciting and creative, that always stands out. I think the other couple words I'd use are consistency, that the reel is like consistently that creative and high quality across. And then, lastly, I always kind of emphasize like, hey, can you like put stuff in games? Is the animation kind of game focused? I see in a lot of like very film focused reels come across, and those are fantastic. And they're often like incredibly high quality and creative, but that doesn't always mean that with just that person's going to be able to plug in directly to one of our teams. So those are kind of the three things that I'm always like on the lookout for a good reel.
Yeah, for me, it's if it comes through the person who is making the reel is having fun making it, and there's some, I'm not sure what ingredient it is of like what, but there's some reels that you just look at them and you're like, oh man, this person really had a good time making this, then they're just going to be a joy to work with. So that for me is highly important.
Yeah, I chime in with that as well. I think it sometimes I see something where it makes me want to talk to the animator or like get to know them, ask them questions about how they did something. I think that as well with execution, I think is huge. Of just they can execute polished animation work. I feel like that's like the baseline for looking at work. And then one that I think has to do with this like X factor that some of us has mentioned. I feel like is also kind of relevant. And I feel like that one is more of like a team chemistry thing where like, hey, what are other skill sets I'm looking for? Like, hey, we have a lot of people who do gameplay. Like maybe we're looking for somebody who has a film perspective and bringing that in. So
I am going to cut in here because I think that's such a perfect segue. As you can tell with like some similarities of like what that creativity looks like, the answer, if you've ever been on the hunt of like, what should I be putting in this demo reel? Somebody just tell me. The answer is so often like, well, it depends. It depends on what the team needs. And so the question I have that I think that I want to talk more about is, if I'm applying in 2025, what are things that I can do with my demo reel that will increase my chances that I can identify that depend state? And how do I identify what specifics people might be looking for?
Feedback. I would say if you get feedback on something, it's tricky to get sometimes, whether from your peers or if you could find these people on LinkedIn and email them. But I was going to say, going back to the other one about things that I like to look for, like I'll say basics, but what like weight and timing and balance and interesting poses. So if you look at your reel and all the timing seems similar, or if the motions you're just doing different attacks on different kind of characters, or you just have a bunch of run cycles, maybe vary it up on different creatures and different characters is also really helpful. And doing more complicated stuff, like characters running and jumping and dying and being more involved than just, maybe being in place is also good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think a good strategy as a starting point for kind of like what should be on your reel and how do you sort of gauge it towards a team. I mean, if you know the product that you're applying to, like if you're applying to League of Legends, I mean, obviously looking at the kind of animation that that team is doing and releasing like now today is like a good target point for it. I think it gets more challenging when you apply for a job where you're like not quite sure what the team's looking for. And as someone who's worked in the R&D space for a while, that's like a big challenge. I think the key thing though is to think about like what kind of developer slash animator are they going to be looking for in a space like that when it's more ambiguous. And you know, generally when you're applying to a game that doesn't exist yet, you know, they'll be looking for, hey, are you a little bit more of like a game dev and an animator combo? Do you have like tangentially related to animation skills? Like, can you show that you've adapted to different animation styles? Like the kind of stuff that allows an animator to sort of work in a space that's a little more ambiguous versus like when you're applying directly to a team where you know exactly what you're applying for, trying to be as specific as possible and target the kind of animations that team is looking for and the kind of stuff they do is definitely the best strategy. But it is hard to, you know, I think particularly like Riot's hiring up a lot of positions, you know, that they're posted in the R&D space where it's just like, come work on our next unannounced title. And you're like, well, what do I have to do to that one? That's a little harder.
I feel that there needs to be some level of honesty with yourself of your work, because if you're trying to guess, okay, here's where I want to be, or at some team that doesn't exist yet, and you're like, oh yeah, 3 years from now they're gonna need me there, you're never gonna hit that mark. So what needs to be in your reel for me are things that genuinely interest you, curiosities that you've had throughout your like time animating, that because at the end of the day the reel is where you're at that, a collection of your work of where you're at in that time. So that's just going to be an honest piece of artwork that's just out there representing yourself. And if you're trying to make it for somebody else, then it's always going to be somewhat disingenuous, and you're always going to be one step behind because that person already did that. Instead of you asking yourself like, oh, what would be this cool hypothetical? And then that just becomes a little more honest. And I think that just becomes a little bit more interesting. And then it really gives an insight of like what you're into. And that way, when you do slot into a team, it'll be a better fit.
I really like that because I also think there's a lot that is like understanding what your own motivations are and the type of team that you want to work on. There's something that people say that is kind of like the most negative possible take of like, oh, you should be bad at things you don't want to do. Or it's like, oh, maybe you shouldn't be bad at anything. But like if in your reel you are doing like really highly realistic mocap cleanup on hit reacts exclusively, and you're like, I hated making that. Well, you're gonna get hired for that. So just like this is not like how to identify like what increases your chances, but like I guess it increases your chances of if you are making something that you are excited about, your chances are you're going to be pouring yourself into a space that then you can sort of reverse engineer it. If you're looking to like get the job, reading the job application, I think a lot of places will sort of put specifically the things that they're looking at. And sometimes it is pretty narrow. We're looking for somebody to do this specific thing, and you can tailor your stuff to them. But you can also say, these are the things I want to do, and go read the job description and be like, oh, that's not what I want to do. And then rather than just blasting that reel to this company that will look at it and say, oh, you are totally at odds. You are not self-aware because you applied with something that doesn't make sense for what this role is. You can sort of that sort of self-awareness and self-identification, I think, can help at least give you a better chance. And it's okay to embrace the things that you like. But if what you like is like getting a job, that's also good too.
Yeah, this is a really interesting observation. I mean, I'll tell like a very quick anecdote. I mean, I applied for a job where I didn't know what the studio is going to be working on, and I presented myself exactly as I am. I was like, oh, I'm like this really kind of techie animator guy. I love to like modify animation systems and help you build like, you know, cool new things. And we had like a great interview. It was awesome. And then they rejected me and said, you're not a good fit for the team. We don't want someone who's going to come and change things. And I was like, well, would like to change things. That's kind of a good fit, right? But that's like a great, you know, that's me as like applying to a little bit more of a senior position. And if you're applying at that sort of entry level, like Lana's talking about, where you like are really getting the job is really important, then maybe you form yourself and craft towards like what the studio wants. But if you are trying to get a job where you'll be like a good fit for the team, I think it's worth it to present yourself as you are and what you're interested in, the kind of animation you like to do. And if that's what the team's looking for, then it will be a good fit. And if it's not, well, then you'd probably be happier working somewhere else anyways, because they're not going to let you do the things that you like to do and the kind of stuff that you like to do. So,
yeah, I think another really good step to take, I know it's kind of spicy. Some people don't like this. Like they said, the industry is all Hollywood and you have to know people. But I'm really firmly on that side of like, you know, if you're interested in a position or you're interested in a company or a team, reach out to the team. I know when I was in college back in the day, you know, it wasn't so easy to do that. And especially for a lot of my seniors and stuff, you know, like 20 years ago, that wasn't a thing. But nowadays, you can just reach out on social media, LinkedIn, Discord channels, and just chat with them just to get a feel for the team and what they look for, what they like, what the working conditions are like. And sometimes if they have extra time, you know, they can take a look at your work and give you just a sit rep of like, hey, you're way over here and we kind of do this very specific thing, you know, like maybe look at these other places or maybe make some new work and stuff like that. I think it's a great starting point for people who are, you know, maybe they've gone to school and worked on stuff, but they don't have a lot of those specifics. Is I would contact people and try to narrow those down.
Yeah, I cannot. I mean, that was one of like the most eye-opening things for me in university too, was like following these people online, going through their work on Vimeo, looking at their like history. A lot of people keep their demo reels up so you can go and see what their first demo reel looked like. I know I intentionally try to do that so that people can sort of see what that journey is like, because that was so helpful for me of just being able to see somebody's path of like where they started, what got them a job, and then where they're at now. Um, and it is so silly to be like, oh, social media, especially because it sucks. But places like this, like we're not the only people doing animation streams. Agora community is so excellent. Sir Wade does a bunch of live streams on YouTube. There's lots of people sharing intel and super excited to answer questions all the time. And even if they're not answering questions, they kind of are by the types of things that they post, the work that they're currently doing, the things that they are excited about. It's like a good way to sort of pulse check about those things before, without even having to ask the question. I'm going to move us along. One of the things that sort of struck me about this, or is that sort of targeted animation, and that um, like having an animation that is like, I forget somebody's words. It's like all Hollywood. We work at a video game studio, and something that gets talked about a lot is the idea of like a game centric reel. What makes a game centric reel? So you're applying to a game studio, and the people know that like by default that you have interests in games.
Game animations. Nah, not a lot of acting. There's so find the game that you like or you're playing right now, and then don't copy it, but see what moves. There's runs and walks, attacks, hit reactions, death animations, and put them on, and then make your own. It's called like a move set or anim set, and do that. So if you're going to do film animation, you would go on 11 Second Club, you're going to download a file and do your storyboards and layout, and you'd animate it and all that stuff. That process, that workflow that you do at a film. But on a game, you should be like you're working on a game. Do animations, do separate animations uh, on one character. Maybe do an attack and a death on one character, and then do some navigation on another one and do their attack, hit reactions and stuff, and show that not only that you have an understanding of how games are put together, but that you also want to do it. And you could have some acting stuff on there, but I wouldn't do too much of that. Or like some cool looking camera and a flip, and they land in a pose. Like maybe as an intro or kind of thing, or like a play of the game. But you got most of it's going to be attacks and runs and hit reactions. So do a lot of those.
I also want to call out quickly in the chat. First of all, great questions. I am pulling questions instead of adding them to the side for a little bit later. So feel free to hit us with those. Tag the rat animators if you can. That'd be super helpful. The Duke Blue says Anthony was a great example of me looking at an animator who got their foot in their door from their reel out of college. When you see what a great when you see what great entry level work looks like, and you have a starting point that looks doable. Anthony, do you want to talk a bit about we don't have your reel today because you're sort of pinch hitting here, but about
Yeah.
what like how did you determine what to put in your reel that made it game centric?
I looked at Chris Singh's 2019 reel, which is his like first 2 or 3 years of skins work, and then just built off that. So I guess to add to Brendan's thing, I'd include everything he said on top of, or as well as some kind of emote. I feel like that helps quite a bit, especially on League and TFT, where we like every time we like have to do some kind of emote, whether it's a dance or something similar to that, or something that expresses the character. It also helps get you in style. You can kind of show your timing, because we do dances, but they're in like League timing, if that makes sense. Like it's pushed, the poses are pushed. It's not one-to-one reference. It kind of shows that you know how to go above and beyond just regular body mechanics. You can like fit it into a certain style, and it's like could be useful for other companies. Like I know Fortnite needs like a bunch of people to do dances and like or like help do it in the Lego style. So like it's very applicable work across different companies. It's not just here.
Yeah. Nigel also calling you in the chat. First of all, hi Nigel. Said you also included different types of game work too. So you had an
Oh yeah.
FPS shot in there as well.
Yeah, I cast like a pretty wide net because I wanted to do either between Riot or like I think I was doing a test for Infinity Ward at the time, so I was doing a bunch of different like game centric animations, and then the timing on the first person stuff was a little different than what I would normally do, as well as like the spacing as well as what I normally do for like say like my League top down stuff was more realistic. So yeah, having like a spread is also good too, I feel.
hmm So one of the things that also got brought up is, Kevin, you mentioned, not like a ton of acting. Like it's not like, oh, we're doing 11-second club shots on these things. But how do you make sure that something is game centric when like games have cinematics? Like what's the right way if you want to work on a cinematics team, but in games, does anybody have thoughts about sort of like riding that line?
Well, if you have more than one or the other, so if there's a lot of acting stuff and you want to try cinematics, or a lot of companies will, like Naughty Dog knows, they'll say cinematics animator, Blizzard, they'll ask for cinematic, and then you do a lot more acting. Um, but like on my reel, we'll see that has some acting on at the end, whether it's helpful for me or not to have it on there. But I have way more game stuff, so just show like they're able to do both. But that's a tricky one. But I would say whatever you want to do more of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So, do you think folks need a quote unquote game centric reel to get a game centric job?
I would say it depends on the team hiring, but I don't necessarily think that that's true, because if I were to receive 5 reels and the best one by far is the films person, you can teach that person the rules of how a game works way easier than you can teach the second best, which might be leagues below the person who's the best, how to make good animation. So for me, the priority is always that the animation's better, the best it could be, rather than it's this thing specifically.
Mm.
But I know just talking around that sometimes that's a deal breaker for some teams, and that's okay. I understand why. But I value the craft more than like the specific minutia of how to implement stuff, because at the end of the day, that stuff is way easier than making good artwork, in my eyes at least.
I want to do a quick moment of troubleshooting. Tyler, did you try and unmute and then we couldn't hear you?
No, I'm good. I saw
Okay.
Brendan unmute. I wanted him to talk first because I was going to say the same thing. Good animation is good animation. And then I was going to say exactly what he just said.
Oh, great. The one thing I would add there is I think good animation is good animation, and I think reading those job descriptions matters a lot. And like it depends like the phase of the project. If something is a stellar film role, I'm probably not going to hire them to be the first person on my games team. Um, context I think matters a lot.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, I've had a lot of film focused reels shown to me and interviewed at Riot, many people who had like film like reels with very little gameplay stuff in it. And for a lot of those, it matters more to me like the follow-up interview. I mean, the first kind of interview we do with the new candidate is like a craft screen, and the kind of questions that I would ask a person like that and want to get good answers around is like, oh, are they a little bit more of like a technically focused film person? Have they worked at a lot of studios where they use like different tools? Are they adaptable to like would ask more around like what tools have you used? How good are you engaging with new types of tools and implementing animations? Like how much were you just like handing off stuff versus kind of following throughout the whole process? Because at the end of the day, like, putting animations in games and thinking about game animation it's like a different tool. And so if they're a person that is like adaptable, has used a lot of tools, is interested in tool development and all that kind of stuff, I'm like willing often to like give them a lot more leeway. But I also have had people come in who are like, yeah, I don't know, I was just thinking about getting into games. I haven't really like explored it at all. I've used like same tools for the last 6 years, and then it's a little bit of a hard sell because you're not quite sure, even if they're like an incredible animator, if they're going to kind of like adapt to that environment. And I still taken risks on people like that over the years, but it's a little bit more of a risk than a little bit of the more known quantity people that either have game stuff on their reel or have like experience with a little bit more of like a tools focus or switching between different tools and that kind of stuff. So
I'm going to use this opportunity to segue because the next thing we wanted to chat about is sort of that piece. Something we've talked about a lot that is very exciting when we see it on a demo reel is like you showed that you implemented it somehow. But that note of being something we really like, we've also seen an influx of what I would think of as kind of like first pass implementation or like the first rung implementation that is not actually sort of improving the quality of the reel. I'd love to talk about when people on their demo reels show something in Maya versus implemented, and what does the best practice there look like? What is the nuance to making and showing implemented work to make sure it actually lands?
From my perspective, I I mean, I never hired anybody, so don't hold it against me. But like, I don't care. I mean, I think it really depends on the role, right? If you're looking for somebody who's really technical and consults with the animation engineers and animation programmer and can talk the same language and go back and forth and do a lot of that work, then it really matters. But if it's more of a like general animation position, I don't think it really matters all that much. I think game engines, once they've been constructed, they all pretty much work the same as far as like an animator coming in on the top level and kind of like adding stuff in. Once you have once you know how how to place your animations and construct like cycles and like kits and things like that, anim graphs and stuff. So personally, I'm more looking for like the mental framework and the mindset, and I think you can totally show that off in Maya. And a lot of the times you have to do that anyways when you're doing like pre-pro stuff, or you just want to show an idea really quick. You just put it in Maya, get the camera constraints going, and you're mimicking gameplay because it's a lot easier to show those ideas. So if you can do that, then I'm like, hey, when you come on in, we'll teach you how to use the engine, and you already know, we're going to have to teach you the specifics anyways of how we specifically work. Even in Unreal, I know some places use that as like, hey, we use Unreal. It's like, well, you build tools on top of it. You have your own workflow, so you're likely going to have to do onboarding anyway. So that's my take on it.
I want to hear from lots of folks, but I want to push on that a little bit where you say you don't care. Because I think it's
Mhm.
very clear that like, and I'm big plus one, like if you can show that your brain is there for like how the pieces chop up and it's all in Maya, I'm not going to sweat that the implementation's not there. But have you seen a reel where somebody has implemented it and it hasn't landed for you? And how does that change your perspective?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great question. Yes, I have, and if it's, I think that's why I'm so like, hey, just do it in Maya and
Mm,
show that you can have the mindset to do it. Because if you show it in game and it looks like garbage, it's like, hey, I can only judge what I'm looking at, and it's like this doesn't look so good. So I would definitely, pass on that if I saw it, and just to kind of reiterate, like it's extremely difficult, to make something look like AAA polished in game. It's usually a lot of people, a lot of eyes have seen it, and there are dedicated people who do the engineering element of, like geometry and calculus and, like math and stuff to make sure everything works and things like that. So yeah, I'd prefer like, do it in Maya if, to make it look really, really good and stuff like that. If you're just going to do a half measure kind of in engine, I'd be like, it's probably better to do it in Maya. So.
Yeah, like if you're gonna do something like attacks and hit reactions, it's gonna be complex. Show that you can do something complicated. But if they're just gonna idle and run and jump, like that's really basic, and you might as well just show a play blast. But you're doing like, oh, you run up and take down someone, like, whoa, they know what they're doing. That's then you can show that you can actually do something more complicated. It's kind of hard to say, but it's yeah, but yeah, or hard to hear, I guess. But yeah.
mhm.
I feel like, oh,
No, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna say, I feel like for associate and intern, you should just not show engine work. Like we will just, if the team can support an intern or an associate, they can have someone to teach you, and that should be the end of that. And they really, the person that like applies to this intern or associate work should just be concerned with like quality first and foremost over the actual implementation. Like that's like secondary in my opinion. Up and maybe like for like mid and above, then you should probably start showing some kind of engine work. But by that time, you'll probably have like better craft experience in general. So it would like be like the cherry on top even then.
I have three thoughts. One is as you're showing your reel out to get a job, you're trying to clear various filters. And one filter you're clearing out is the hiring recruiter. Now, this person doesn't necessarily know much about the craft, but I think it's an easier sell to say, "Hey, I know how to make a game animation. Here, it looks more gamey because it's in an engine rather than it being in Maya." So that's might be one angle of, "Hey, if I want to be one step above the rest of the competition, if you can make it look good in engine, I think that is a plus." And it also says a lot about you. So another angle would be if you put it in the engine, just shows that you're curious about it. And then like that just if you genuinely are curious about it, that's a good thing to show, I think. Because yeah, because eventually that's what you're going to be doing. So if you're not asking yourself that question while you're not in the job, like assuming that that's just going to knowledge is going to land on your lap on the job might not work in your favor. So if you're asking that question now, because at the end of the day, Blender's free and Unreal is free. I mean, you could just do it for free. You just need a computer and the internet, and you can just make that experimentation. And if you realize that that's something that you hate, then like just switch it to films.
Mhm. There's a question in the chat here that I think is really good and speaks exactly to what I wanted to say. So the Duke Blue, as Anthony mentioned, if you could get a good implementation, wouldn't that be a huge plus on an associate or intern reel? I think so. And to me, I think the bottom line is you need to be 1,000,000% confident that you are showing a skill that they want. And I think that what Anthony is sort of getting at is that an associate intern reel They don't necessarily want that. They want a good animator that they could teach things to. But if you have that, you better have a billion% confidence that it's true. I say the same thing a lot about like graphic design or like doing interesting additional visuals on your reel. I really like making my reel a whole experience from the it's edited to the sound. It has a tie-in of particular visuals that matters to me to show that I have those skills that of like sort of making a whole product and not just an animation. That really mattered to me to show. But I also had confidence that it was slick and it landed. If you have any questions, just don't do it because unless it says it in the job description, you it only the thing that hits me is when I see an implementation, especially of an animation that looks not good, my only thought is you should have spent that time animating. And that sort of is the bottom line because if it's an animation role, animation is the heart of it. And anything on top of that is a huge plus. But you got to know that it's a plus and not a neutral or below.
Yeah, I wanted to just chime in on this. I mean, mostly I'm going to echo what everyone else said, but I wanted to add a couple things. The way I think about the implementation side of it is it says something about you at different levels, right? And you got to ask, like, is this like what I want the person that's going to look at this to know about me? And so if you're just doing like a basic level of implementation, like getting an animation into a game and playing it, while that is a good skill, it's not a particularly like notable thing in the industry anymore. Like just being able to get an animation into the game and play it and string like a walk, a run, and idle together, the things that you should probably know how to do, but it's maybe hard to say, but like it's not really impressive anymore. And so unless you have something impressive to show with your implementation, I would tend to lean on just like trying to make it impressive in Maya instead and look like a game in Maya. I think the things when I see game implementation that really excites me and I'm like, oh shoot, it's often when they show me something in Maya that was really exciting and then they show it to me in game and it's that good or better, right? That's the kind of thing where I'm like, ooh, that's what makes me be like, I want to talk to that person. And so if you're to the point where you can take this cool, exciting thing you're making in Maya, and then you can replicate that in the game, and it's at least as good as Maya. Like it's like, boom, I could show them side by side, and like the camera, the like way it blends with the other animations, all that's like as good as it is in Maya. Great. If it's better than in Maya, like let's say you also have the skill to put like VFX and lighting and camera work and stuff on it, even better, right? Like you show me like a bland playblast in Maya, then show it in game, and it's like, oh wow. I mean, I've seen some reels like that, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to talk to this person, right? Like their ability to like understand how animation works in the engine and implement it to level it up from their original concept, that's really exciting. But if you're not there yet, that's also fine. Like that's an exciting skill to have. And if you have it, you should show it. But if you have the ability to still like envision what that could look like and generally understand the pieces of it and how to make that in Maya and kind of like replicate that game experience, for most reels, that's good enough. Right? Like if you can show me in Maya, like a replicated game experience of like an exciting move and it kind of like bleeds in and out of a run or something like that, I'm like, that's great. Like I can teach that person how to implement that and make that look good. Right. So really what I'm kind of getting at is that like show it off if it's an actual skill you have, but if you just sort of have basic knowledge about it, that's the sort of thing that I maybe just like hopefully talk about in the interview, right? Like I just try my best to do it in Maya. And then in the interview, I'd be like, hey, I also do know how to do basic implementation. I can bring animations into the game and stuff. Just because that is nowadays like, there's so many tutorials out there and so many people like learning this kind of stuff that this sort of basic implementation stuff just isn't as impressive and exciting as it used to be.
Well said. I'm going to move us right along. I think I'm going to do sort of a quick round. Just first things that come to your mind, and then we have 2 more questions, and we'll dive into our own demo reels. What not to show? What is something that you should not show?
Something, it goes into the line of what we were already talking about, but camera work is a big thing. If your engine implementation isn't good, don't put an engine. If your camera work isn't good, don't do it. It's another skill to have, and it's hard to learn. So just focus on animation if you're not comfortable with camera animation.
Yeah. I'll say 3 or more minutes of animation. I would say anything above 2 minutes of animation. My patience is so low now. I'm like, a 1 minute reel, like a tight 1 minute reel is great. Two is already
My
feeling long.
my reel was 55 seconds.
That's
So
what I'm talking about.
that's all you need. You only need that much, if not shorter. Yeah.
Mine's like 2 minutes. I should cut it
Mine's
down.
also 2 minutes. That's why it's the perfect length.
Jeez.
I'll say one that's kind of weird, but I've seen like a surprising amount of reels that either have like crude humor or like humor that's just not funny. And I know that's like subjective, but like if you're gonna put like a joke or like a funny animation in your reel, like run it by some other people and like see if the timing lands or the joke lands. If they're like, I probably wouldn't put it in there. And in fact, I've seen some reels where I was like, what am I watching? This is like not appropriate to be like sending out. So like run it by somebody for like, if you have like humor or, particularly like adult stuff. I'm not saying I don't put anything like adult or crude in your reel, like that can be funny. Right. But, make sure that you've like sort of run that by somebody and that they sort of agree that it is like general purpose, good humor, not something that's like real weird.
I got one. It's kind of I don't see it a whole lot, but when they show the animation with the controls and without the controls, like animation, like tech artists maybe they'll use other animators' work and put the controls on, but like make sure it doesn't say perspective, and then if you do a play blast, the grid's okay. I got a lot of grid on my stuff, but like hide the controls.
Hide all the
Is one.
decals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I say check your resolution. My God.
Turn the anti-aliasing on the play blast, please. That's just a little button.
Yeah. Yeah. And just on that note, crazy textured backgrounds where you're like highly specular character is on top of it and you're busy and then it's shiny and the thing's busy and it's like everything kind of mushes together. Just like a gray background with like some boxes that sort of show where like the motion kind of is. Come on. It's that's that's plenty. That's plenty. I want to see the animation. Any last hits for what not to show? I saw Alex in the chat. Bad animation. Hell yeah, brother. All right, let's move along. So, before I dive into our reels, there's one more question that I don't think gets talked about that much. Is sort of about rejection. Can we talk a bit about that? What you submitted your reel, it didn't. You got the rejection letter. What now?
Yeah, I can tell. Oh, go
Actually,
ahead. Go ahead, Tyler.
sorry. I'm an expert in rejection. Okay, from graduating animation mentor to hitting Riot, my first full-time studio job, it took me 7 years. All right, I got rejected many times. There's a few things I want to say. One is just because it's a no right now does not mean it's a no forever. So use that no, that rejection as motivation to keep working on your reel. And in 9 to 12 months, feel free to reapply. Something I also want to briefly touch on is be wary of having like a dream studio. Sometimes if you have like a dream studio and you would get rejected, like, oh my God, my life and my career is over and that no other place is worth working for. But it's like, why do you have a favorite studio? It's because they make games you like to play. But it's like one of my favorite games is Halo. But if I went to go work at Bungie, the Bungie today is not the same Bungie is that made Halo. It's not the studio that makes the games, it's the people. So just it's so much more important to work with amazing people on anything than work with bad people on a good project. So just keep that in mind. Even if you aren't reaching your dream studio or your goal, take a detour to other places you might not normally think of. You'll meet amazing people and you'll learn a lot.
Well, yeah, I know for a lot of people, I think from the outside looking in, they see people in these positions and think that they just walked in there first try, but I think most people, go through like ups and downs in their career to get to where they really want to be. And sometimes that is getting rejected from a lot of positions. I know for me, when I was working at my last studio, we had some shakeups internally, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. And I had my mentor at the time was like, 15-year vet. He was trying to be like an art director and stuff like that. And he found a job like instantaneously, like when our team was dissolving. And I was like, I'm going to do the same thing. And I put my reel out. I shotgunned my reel out to like 30 different places, and I didn't get a single callback. I think I got like 2 custom rejection letters where there's like a human actually typing on the other side to like reach out to me. But what was cool is in those 2 instances, they kind of gave me a little bit of feedback, which was nice. And one of them was like, hey, we might open some junior roles up, because I was applying for like a mid role. And they're like, yeah, keep working at it, stuff like that. And I feel like the rejection, the amount of rejections plus those 2 letters kind of indicated to me like, oh, okay, like I still need to improve if I want to get into this part of the industry and like get these specific jobs. So from there, I kind of like looked through a bunch of educational resources and stuff, and was able to kind of go back to school and then go through the hiring process about a year later and stuff like that. And we'll actually talk about it when we talk about my reel and stuff. So yeah, it's a part of the process. So
I also want to call out, like, I think your goal is to always be the person who should be undeniably hired. But even if your demo reel is like undeniably excellent, there's such an element of it depends with every place that you go to that you have no idea. So like first of all, building up that resilience of just being, first of all, accepting that uh don't take it personally. These 2 things have to live simultaneously in your mind. Don't take it personally, as in like your heart and your mind and your soul, but you should probably improve because you are not the person who is undeniably the right hire from the demo reel. But understanding, like, I know I've told the story on the Rat before. I'll make it really quick, but like at the end of my internship at Blizzard, my boss straight up told me like, "Oh, we were never going to hire you originally." The other guy that we were talking to, it was down to 2 of us, so I'd gotten far enough. We'd interviewed, but like he said, we weren't going to hire you. We're going to hire the other guy because he had more experience. But I made a really embarrassing joke and I couldn't face him, and so we hired you instead. So like my first big role, my demo reel was like good enough to have the conversation, but like I never would have known that. Like if I got rejected, I never would have known I was the second choice. I just wouldn't know. They're like, it could be any reason why you get rejected. That guy was the first choice, and I don't know who it was, but they will never know that the reason that they got rejected was because the interviewer made a joke that they were embarrassed about. So you cannot take it personally. Building that resilience and accepting that there's any reason why it might not be the right role, but I still have work that I can do. Always, everybody can always be improving. So those 2 things have to live together. Because applying with the same demo reel, it's still a high chance it's not going to get you the right result. You got to have a forward momentum there, but don't take it to your heart. Don't put the weight of the world on your shoulders when you get those letters. Build that resilience and take it as an exciting call to action for what the next application has in store. All right, with that, I think we should head into the demo reels. I also have been taking questions from the chat that if we have time at the end, or anybody who can hang out for a little bit, we are going to make sure that we answer those. So thank you for your awesome questions. I said it earlier, but in case you're just joining us, we also have a bunch of rats in the chat who have been answering questions in the type. So thanks, folks. We're going to go over to the Sync Sketch review. So I'll transition us over here, starting with JT. JT, your reel is representing the reel that got you the job as an associate animator on the old League of Legends. Is that true or false?
True.
True. Okay, well, let's watch it through once, and then it'd be great for you to talk a little bit about your process, and we can sort of talk about your reel.
Cool.
So let me hit the volume. Remember, rats, you control your own volume. Don't forget that I can't do that. And let's do it.
I'm still seeing the
Am I in the
video.
sync?
Yeah, I'm still seeing us on the stream.
Oh, on the stream?
Oh, sync up. No, you got to sync up to the sync sets link or check out the stream. She's
Yeah.
not going to share the
I'm
screen
not
link.
going to
Oh,
share the
okay.
screen. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to play the video though. You can join us when you arrive.
Gotcha. Cool. Video.
And to be clear, I didn't check this. Your demo reel doesn't have audio.
Nope. And I think it's 20 seconds. It's really short. So, yep. Mhm.
Beauty. Short and sweet indeed. All right, can you talk a bit about like where you were with this demo reel and why do you think you were successful? And then I'll let you talk a bit about it. The rats can dwell on why they think you were successful.
For sure, yeah. So like I said, I got rejected like 30 times, and I ended up finding a mentorship academy. Shout out to Kilsel. If anybody knows about it, definitely check it out. They have like world-class instructors who are like working at the time while they're mentoring, which is fantastic. And I worked with them for about a year and was assembling my new reel with shots from there. So that's basically what this is. As far as like why it was successful, I really tried, there's like an art to making reels, and just like because it's an art, it's subjective, but there's like a lot of principles and stuff that we've kind of talked about here and we've said in other streams. So I tried to make like something that just stuck to like the baseline, like Lana was talking about, all these frills and camera and music, and I was like, I'm not gonna do any of that. It takes too much time, and I don't believe in that in my own skill set. So I was like, just going super bare bones. And I had
See, that's not
heard,
my default
oh,
expectation.
okay.
To be clear, I think this reel is like exactly what the expectation is. You got a great background. You got some cubes in that little line showing you what's up. I think it's mwah, chef's kiss. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, no, so that's essentially what I was trying to do, is just like make a reel that showcased my animation work, and that's it. I was really interested in game specific stuff. I wasn't really into like cutscenes and things like that. I was interested in like getting in the engine and putting stuff together, and I did have some engine stuff where I was working on like an Overwatch kind of kit and stuff like that. But and I'm curious, like, if this has happened to anybody else. When I was working on my reel, these opportunities kind of came out of nowhere. So there were two kind of companies that I applied to. One was Riot, one was Airship Syndicate, and they kind of just sprung onto the map. And and that was the call to action for me to be like, okay, hey, I was just making this work in a vacuum. Let me now turn it into stuff that I could put on my reel. So I took like a week or so to like put stuff together. And let me see, I'm in the sync. Like this shot specifically as well, with the jump air attack and stuff. It was an old piece that I made, but I went back and tried to improve things on it because I wanted this type of work on my reel. So, I feel like as you're building a reel, you might build up a repository, but just like even when you're in the like professional space and working on like a live game and stuff like that, you're going to continually get better and better. So I use that as like a way to go through and spruce up some more work. And the same, I think I didn't even have a run cycle at first. And that was one of those things where it's like, hey, you kind of want to show that. So I made one specifically for this reel. And actually, funnily enough, for this shot, I made this for Airship Syndicate. They were working on a game at the time, which was unreleased, which was Wayfinder. And at the time, they only had like 5 seconds of footage available to the public. And so I just like went to the video that had that and just grabbed those clips out and just looped them over and over again to try to be like, okay, this is kind of the camera angle. Okay, this is the game style, the art style. Cool. Let me find a rig that looks kind of similar. Awesome. And then I tried to make a run cycle that represented what they were going for. So yeah. And everything else was just work I collected over that year at Kilsel. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It is beautiful work. Rats, I'd love your thoughts and opinions on this demo reel. What makes this a primo associate level reel?
Dude, the
Uh,
timing is. Oh, sorry. The timing is awesome. Really nice.
Thank you.
That's what I get. Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to point out a couple of things that this is specifically a great example of some of the exact stuff we were talking about like, should I show in-game stuff versus not? And none of this stuff is actually in game, right? Like this is all just in Maya. Yeah. And so like the fact that I even need to ask that, I mean, there's just these two clips, right? Of, this part here where he's like running through a space. And then this last one here, which is clearly kind of like simulating like a third person camera. That's, a pretty classic one. And that's, to me, it's like enough to suggest like, oh, you understand, like you're going to be animated to the camera. And I actually think that for me, there's like a small thing in this reel that is like the thing that actually caught my eye. It's when I see this run, I was like, that run's okay. It's fine. But then when I see it from behind the game camera, it's like real good. It's like animated like to the game camera. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's real nice. That alone is like enough to be like, okay, yeah, because a lot of times we like animate a thing to the game camera, and then when you show it and from every angle, it's like really easy to scrutinize. But then when you see it in game, you're like, oh yeah, feels good in game, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm talking about. Is like if you are going to show something from game angle or in the game, like make sure that it's like as good at it or like elevates the animation in a way that like feels nice, and it's not like, ugh.
I
It's
want to
not, doesn't look as good.
I want to massively +1 that, because even looking at this, I was like, because we're not like reviewing, we're not here to like give you notes, but like if there were a note, I was gonna say I know the first thing I would have been like this dude's like looking at the ground, but you immediately showed that doesn't matter, and you thought about it. It doesn't matter. You made it look good from this thing. I had the exact same thoughts, and so I think that's just it's the great. I think this is like showing an excellent example of like what implementation or what counts as like good implementation is the consideration and not the implementation itself.
Word up. It's going to be funny when we look at my art test, because that is the exact opposite.
Any other thoughts on the demo reel? Oh, the other thing I also wanted to say is like it just feels very economical. I love that you turned off her hair. I hate that model. That hair is so long and unwieldy. I almost never see it look good in something. Sorry, Jonathan Cooper. She's so busy. There's so much shit on
Yeah.
her. And then just like I turned the hair off. I'm like, yeah, good. I like it brought me great joy that you focused on the right things and didn't waste time on like, oh, okay, you did the pendulum part too. Like,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, one more thing. I know I'm talking a lot about this reel, but one more thing I wanted to talk about, just because it's like so good an example of like a lot of the things we just previously talked about, is this shot here. Like once again, this is like not showing anything in game, but like it's an economical reuse of an asset for two different like outputs in a game, right? Which is actually surprisingly a concept that like a lot of early game animators don't really like understand. Like the fact that like a good chunk of this is like totally reused right from the beginning here. Like you're like basically like reusing like the intro, and the timing and pacing and everything of it is like the same up to the point that it changes, right? Like immediately I'm just like, oh yeah, they're going to be able to like build game assets, because I can be like, oh yeah, I need you to do like 4 variants of this attack, and they're going to be economical about how they approach that. They understand that like you can use pieces of one animation and then just like modify it, and all the things that are exciting about like a good game developer. So
Any other thoughts? And then we will move into sort of phase 2. Okay, JT, do you want to take us through like the second sort of part of your application? And I think the space we most expect this second phase to exist.
Yeah. Can you? Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So this is a art test that I took. So I showed my reel, and like just to give a window, I guess, into the hiring process a little bit for me. Submitted my reel, and then I heard back from HR, and then they told me about the process, and then from there I made contact with the hiring manager, and he had said that he wanted to still see some more work, and that's how I ended up taking the art test. And for the art test, essentially, like, you know, they're all different and they change them as well. But for this one, the main thing that my hiring manager wanted to see was creativity. Funnily enough, like we mentioned that so much earlier in this conversation, and that was the number one thing he wanted to see. And he wanted to see a recall for League of Legends, because that was the team that I was applying for. And I wasn't a League player, and you guys will see based on the art test, I clearly didn't play the game. But he was like, creativity, that's the most important thing. And it was reiterated in the prompt. And there were specifics that I had to stick to as well. But there was not like a, hey, these are how we make them specifically make them fit that. It was like a very loose, like, it's got to be 8 seconds. It's got to be creative. That's all I want to see. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. And they also provided rigs for me to use. They're like, hey, you have a selection of rigs and pick. And I was like, all right, cool. So I identified most with Jinx, and I was most familiar with her. And that one, the ideas were flowing when I was like jamming. I'm like, okay, what could I do for 8 seconds? Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is I did a lot of research. So I had no idea what this stuff was. I didn't even know what a recall was. So I, you know, looked at the game and stuff like that. And from my perspective at the time and my experience at the time, I did the best I could with like trying to ascertain, you know, the limits on this thing. But anybody who's familiar with League will know this is pretty far off. So yeah.
All right, let's check it out. The props makes me giggle.
Oh man, it's so funny to look at now. And one of the other things as well, you could probably just loop it, because I just show it from a bunch of different angles, and you can see how broken it is from a lot of other angles too. One other thing I will say is the wind down here at the end. I did mention to them. So with the art test, it's timed in a sense where like you can't just work on it for a year. They kind of, in this case, they were working with me. We're like, hey, we know you're busy, you know, so like just going back and forth, like, hey, if you need more time, literally just tell us. Like, it's fine. We can give you a few more weeks, whatever. Like, it's okay. And I'm like, all right, cool. So that last the wind down, I was like, hey, I'm not really done, but you know, like I've taken enough time, you know, like is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. So yeah.
So some of the things I love about it that I think makes it clear why this is such a successful art test, and sort of shows you like what the expectations are, being like, we can teach you that you got to stay in the circle.
Yeah.
You know, we can show you those things, but like your character and like you're willing to push things, and like her that stomp up and the throwdown, the posing being so clear and the timing being snappy. It's like it has all of the bones there that are the important bones of what made this such a great art test.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was an interesting experience working on it. And I don't know if this is blasphemy, but anybody who is taking an art test, I would say, you know, definitely get feedback. When you're working on the team, the expectation is that you're going to be getting feedback from the team anyways. So definitely reach out. I did not make this in a vacuum. I was still at that academy, so I was getting feedback, and definitely the feedback helped me, you know, polish things out. But one of the things I wanted to say as well is after I got hired, I talked to the team and was like, hey, so why'd you guys hire me? Because I was just really curious. And even in my interview process, I asked, there was like a senior animator who was doing my last craft interview. And they're like, hey, you can ask us any questions. And I was like, yeah, so what do you think of like the art test, and like what can I improve on, and stuff like that. And she kind of broke down my animation and brought in that like circle, the recall circle. She's like, hey, yeah, the first thing is, you know, it's got to fit in the recall circle, and the props are too big. And she gave me suggestions on how to like reel it in to make that fit.
Mm-hmm.
The other big thing that I got when I was asking the team, you know, and getting feedback basically on like, yo, you know, how could I do better, and what you guys really think and stuff like that, is the hiring manager mentioned that like he liked the reel and the art test, and then he also liked the write-up I did. So we had to do like a Well, it says like, yeah, write 3 to 5 sentences on like, just describing your piece, just giving context. I wrote like a few pages because I was like, I had just like a lot to say about what I was doing and like the thought process behind what I was making. And essentially for this, I had like pitched a skin line with like this recall being a part of like a skin line of recalls and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure that that hit of like, yeah, it might look odd in a vacuum, which is putting candles on the birthday cake, but like, this is what it's supposed to be. And I kind of detailed that out. And he had mentioned that that was a big reason why they chose my application, because it showed that with the thinking that we do on skins, that my thought process was similar. And that's how they think about assets and stuff as well. So,
Yeah. I also wrote a multi-page document with my animation test. I also saw a comment from Rat John DeFont in the chat. Primarily why I didn't choose Jinx for my test. Those dang braids. I when I went through my animation test, went and looked at all the recalls for the different characters, and I was like, which one has the least compelling recalls in my opinion, so that if my animation was put next to it, it wouldn't look worse. So sorry. There's a statement in there somewhere. Anyway, thank you so much for the insight.
for sure.
Any other thoughts on this before we move on to our mid-level? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah, one last thing. If anybody, is curious about more of the specificities of like the art test or anything, or the demo reel process for me, like feel free to reach out, and I'm totally down to just talk about it more.
cool. Wonderful. Rats in the chat for JT, everybody. Thank you so much. And Brendan, do you want to tee us up?
Hello. Sure. I think that my reel here is just a collection of rejection spite acts of myself. So I have a couple of reels. One of them's the game reel, and one of them's the film reel. And as I got rejected from companies, I always tried to like analyze what I was missing from, and then I would go back and maybe take a course and maybe pick a mentor that either worked at the company or a company adjacent, or like really ask questions of like, hey, so what should I be doing? And so this is just an amalgamation of all my failures, I guess.
Hell yeah. And this again, this is the reel that landed you the Riot job.
This is correct. So this is from I did the games program while I was working for Disney Interactive. And then this is a piece that I finished the game course and I said, okay, no feedback. I kind of want to go by myself to see what my actual skills were the one before. And then I got rejected from Blizzard a few times because I didn't have anything inside of a game engine. So this was me out of spite going and like, okay, I want to learn how to put stuff in a game engine. And talking to the team after they hired me, they did say that, oh, we really like that you could implement stuff in game engines. So that was kind of interesting. And then I didn't think that my game animations were necessarily that good. This is from my first job I ever had animating. So I kind of capped it off with the best animation I had at the time, which was this one from my film course that I took after I got rejected from DreamWorks. So just as a, hey, I can animate stuff that doesn't look that bad. But yeah, that's
nice. I somehow broke my audio, so we couldn't get the line from it. I'm sorry, but great reel. Who wants to sort of, or do you want to quickly, while the rats sort of think on some points, what do you think made this appealing to your current job at Riot?
I just think I got lucky, to be honest. Like, you just have to be better than everybody else that's applying. But definitely, I kind of think that every time that I got rejected off of something, I kind of built another thing on top of that I was missing. So I think this is just a little bit like a complete skill set of like, hey, I can do a little bit of everything. And at the time, I think that's what the team needed. I also like focus like, I don't think and myself as like art pieces, I was like, okay, this is tailored towards this. It's more of like, hey, I like how this looks, and like if it's functional or not, like I don't really care that much. So that's my focus. Which lands me in a little bit of an interesting place at work, because then you start asking other ideas of like, hey, but why not this? So you start pushing envelopes, which is kind of cool. But also, like, a lot of times you just have to live with like, okay, well, the things that you're pitching are too wild and they're not going to be made here at
Yeah.
the company, but that's totally okay.
Yeah. Uh, One of the things that really strikes me, again, talking about that implementation, because it was such a big part of our conversation, adding the VFX and your animation in the implementation does feel really good. It doesn't feel like the animation is playing like second to the implementation. It feels like you've thought about it and it feels stylish and cool to that character. But the piece that really strikes me a lot is this attack animation thing is so badass. Uh
That would be
the
cool.
weight of this guy, like he's throwing him around, but he's not like a ginormous monster, right? He's like kind of the same size as him. And the fact that when he kills him and starts dragging him around, the legs stay dragging on the ground. Like he's not so huge that he'd be like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah," like a dog, or like it's not like the Hulk, right? Throwing him around like a rag doll. He's ragdolled, but he's still like a human corpse. Ooh, that's juicy. Mm, love
It's
it
pretty horrible, but in all the good ways.
in all my favorite ways. Anyone else?
Yeah, there's a section that I really enjoyed personally, which is right after the Samus gameplay. You have this really sick cinematic shot, which I think looks sick. I like a lot of the poses. I like the timing. I really love the path of the arrows as well. It's so freaking cool. Um, this section and the section with the turtle, to me, especially with the music that you have playing, like showed a lot of like personality, I guess. And I really enjoyed that. And I think it came out a lot when we were talking earlier in the questions in the Q&A section, but it made me curious about who made it. And I was impressed by the animation quality. So I'm like, personally, for me, that's enough for me to be like, okay, let me talk to this person and pick their brain and, you know, see how they like to create. So
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't
Yeah,
like this section here, for instance. I don't even think that animation is that good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, it looks gamey. I'll put it in the game stuff. Like that'd be probably the first one that I'd take out.
I think the variety you have is really nice, and then the ideas like this, like wait, what is like this is great, and I love that you started the thing with an animation instead of a dumb black screen like mine. So that's awesome, and he kills something. So this is great. You start off right off the bat, like, oh, dude, like, okay, what's next? You're like, oh, cool. You're like, wait, what? Like, wait, what is that? It's such a cool, such a crazy idea.
Yeah.
This is great. And then the in-game stuff is cool. And then this is cinematic. It's like cinematic-y and gameplay. The direction is great. The cut is great. Like she's right there. You're looking at these guys. They're right there. So the direction's really nice. And then the turtle's back. I'm like, wait, what? This is so cool. It almost could be a game, like you're hopping over stuff. But yeah,
Hmm.
exaggerated poses. Yeah, it's just cool.
I think one of the things that makes me like this distinctly mid-level versus like associate level is the fact that you have this included, where it's like this kind of game is not the game that we're working on at Riot, but it is specifically showing a game that is like a finished product in a way that to me, when I'm looking for somebody who's mid-level, I am looking for somebody who has experience working on teams. Like we're in a collaborative space and showing that, okay, somebody's already hired you to do something. You've already worked with people and there's a finished looking product tells me something also about like your soft skills and your like ability to have been hired in the past. That is like, I think it is important. If the animation is really awful, like don't include it. But if you have worked on something that is like a product that's shipped, I do think including that as a part of your reel or having a clear access to that kind of thing in your reel, I think it's nice to show that from that mid-level space of like somebody's already hired me. There's almost like a I can't think of the right words right now, but it just to me it says something about not just being an entirely independent person and you've worked with people before. Cool. Any other thoughts here before we move on? Brendan also has a supplemental material.
Yeah, so oftentimes when you get interviews or you get hired offers or stuff, they'll ask like, "Oh, do you have anything else you can show?" That's a common one. So this was something that I made while I was learning Unreal, and I just kind of wanted to document it because I was so jazzed about it that I was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool!" So I just kind of put this on YouTube as a, "Hey, here's what I've learned." And then just kind of like the blueprinty stuff. The animations I actually made, all the animations in about 3 or 4 days because I just wanted to do the blueprint and then I was just going to update them later, which I never did. But all this blueprint stuff was just a couple of weeks of just like online tutorials. Like nobody really taught me. I just like went in and it's just like insane what you can do. And I'd never done this before. So I was just jazzed and having a blast kind of learning it. And I just needed an outlet for it. So I wasn't going to make a game. So I just made a little YouTube video of like, look what I did, look what I learned. And apparently,
oh, go ahead. I have it muted right now, but in the video, Brendan is doing like a talk over of what he's done.
And this was referenced in my interview. They're like, "Oh, it's cool that you know all this stuff," and I was like, I actually don't know anything. This is, but looks like it because I made a little video out of it. So I think that this one came a long way of like getting me the job.
Yeah, cool. I think that like again talking about how we show that implementation, a separate video, totally good. If it's great. There's also one comment in here in the chats, but that is very specific to you is Brendan, since you were making a new animation every time you got rejected to add to your reel, did you also remove stuff that was already in there that you didn't think was good enough? And if so, how did you figure out what to remove?
Yeah, I think that once you start like either stuff that you feel has gotten stale, it's like, oh, this isn't that good, then you just kind of chop it. And I try to keep it under a minute. Like I'll pick a section of a song that I kind of think is kind of boppy, and I'll just be like, okay, that sounds like the correct amount, and I'll just edit the reel around that. And if it doesn't fit, I'll just take it out. And then I played a lot of like what is hitting at the moment. So it's like I inserted one video and I applied to a bunch of places. And then it was like, okay, I replaced it to another, and I would just replace the link in Vimeo. So I would just kind of shuffle around what my order of my reel was to see if that was a factor or not. Whether it was or not, I don't know. But I would remove stuff while I was adding new stuff in. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Any other last thoughts here? What makes this a primo mid-level reel?
I love the reel. I don't have thoughts about it, but I did have a question for everyone here, potentially people that work in the Unreal Engine. For if you're looking for maybe senior or higher level, showing something like this implementation, but more in depth, if you're doing something more than just plug and play, is that something you guys look for when hiring animators?
Skylar?
Yeah, I guess I'll chime in. Yes. I mean, this represents work that's like well beyond the sort of plug and play work, right? Like there's a lot of blueprint. I mean, this if I just seen the like real stuff and I asked, hey, do you have more of this? And I was sent this, I'd be like, oh yeah, this is great, right? This is like, because I, as a person that kind of works in the space, can look at that state machine alone and be like, oh yeah, that's like not just a tutorial showing you how to do. That's like a lot of tutorials showing you how to do the different pieces, right? At minimum, you watched many tutorials to build all the different pieces of that, right? And then even later, you show like some cool like arrays of interesting things that you did. Like, anyways, so this is a great example of what I was saying. That's like, there's a lot of people out there showing stuff that is like a basic implementation that you're sort of getting from like watching a tutorial or two. And if you're gonna show this kind of stuff, showing it something at this level that's like 1 step, 2 steps beyond that, that's like, yeah, I kind of collated some of the interesting ideas I found from tutorials and then built my own thing with it. That's already showing me like, yeah, you learned a thing and then you applied it to your own project. You didn't just like plug and play or swap and replace like the generic third person project kind of stuff.
Yeah. But in like the baseline demo reel, I also think a lot of this is something that can come out of the interview. Like at default, if you don't know how to sort of bring that in, having just a solid demo reel, usually in that first craft screen, if it's somebody like Skylar, able to be like, hey, I saw this was an engine. Can you sort of walk through that? And being able to talk through that and be able, it's pretty clear when somebody knows what's up because they'll be like, oh, I swapped the assets in the thing. Or they'll be like, oh, here's all the things that I did. So a lot of the times I think that even if it isn't represented in the demo reel, it comes out in the interview process. And so even for like senior level and above, making sure that that animation quality is still at the forefront of everything will be integral.
And that, what you just said is a great point. Like if you put a piece of gameplay in engine animation in your reel, I'm going to ask you about it and I'm going to dig into it too. And like seeing this extra supplementary bit, I'm like, Brendan could talk about this. Like he could talk about how he built it. And, you know, maybe he's not going to know every single nuanced thing at the exact, you know, but clearly knows about blend spaces, he knows about stage, all this stuff. He's going to be able to talk about it. If you don't feel confident that you could like talk about the work you did in the engine beyond just like I swapped out the assets, like maybe don't put it, because we're going to grill you about it a little bit because we want to know what the depth of knowledge around there is.
Yeah, big time. Big time. All right, I'm going to move us forward, but can we get rats in the chat for Brendan, please? Thank you, Brendan. All right, our senior animator demo reel that we're looking at, Adam is not with us here today, but we're looking at Adam's work, and he did request that I give the spiel for him. The spiel being, where is it? Well, first of all, he said, "Are you sure that you want to see my reel? I don't want anyone retroactively firing me." His reel's great. But his thoughts are the number of times I've seen people with great reels who are just not great at the job they were hired for, which often takes a broader range of skill. Um, I'd like to add that I think I got my specific job because I had action and camera. And so if I hadn't made some shots using camera and fighting, I wouldn't have been a good candidate for it because that was what was being asked of the role. So that's the caveats about Adam's stuff. And let's check it out.
Oh my god, he's gonna kill him! Fucking worm! You don't got the stones! How is this not real?
Bum, 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 bum. All right, folks, who's got thoughts for Adam? What makes this a senior level reel?
You can just tell that he loves games. I mean, it's everything's like I'm in a video game and through this entire reel. And it just screams it, which I love.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Well, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I know I talk a lot, so I'd be happy if other people chime in. Please do. But I just specifically want to say, like, I interviewed Adam for this position. His reel caught my eye, and I advocated pretty hard for him specifically because this reel, which showed just like such a massive variety. Like when I was talking about like, oh, show gameplay implementation, whatever, but like not only is there like a bunch of gameplay, like in-game stuff, but like every single shot that's in here is like a totally different game too, and it's all like a good version of what it is. And that's one of the things I remember talking to him about in the interview, is just like his sort of adaptability to be able to like work on all these different projects and the needs of them. And some of them were like motion capture, and some of them were fully hand keyed, and some of them were more cinematic. And it's like a really impressive reel from that standpoint, when you sort of realize that like every one of these shots in here is like a completely different workflow. And so as far as like when we were looking for Adam for like an R&D project, looking for someone who's like adaptable, is going to be able to use a lot of different tools, is going to be able to plug in and help a team like figure out how to make the game they want to make. He was just like such a good pick. And this reel, I think, really highlights all the things that he was really good at and is really good at. And he was able to talk about all of them in the interview, right? Like we went through this shot by shot, and he was able to describe like a cinematic workflow, and then this really challenging boxing game that was like a lot of like million assets blended together, and grappling and hit reactions and all the syncing stuff, and then all the way to the like very motion capture and directing that and all that, and was able to sort of like adeptly talk through all of it. So I think this is just like a really like great example of like a very broad animator with like a lot of experience, who's just worked on like a ton of different stuff. And to Brendan's point, it's all also like clearly has like charm and like feels a little special too. Each little shot has its own little like flavor that's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, that was neat. Oh, as you're going through, I just keep thinking that in my head. You know, there's like the shot in the boxing one. Like I think the boxing one we talked about was like the least maybe like animation impressive one from just like a appeal standpoint. But then we talked a lot about like syncing it up, and there's like the one shot where it punches him and the hit's like perfect and the spittle comes out and everything, and how did they sync up all the VFX and everything to make that happen. So even on the ones that had like pretty limited animation to them, there's still like a lot of cool game dev stuff to talk about that was like related to animation.
Yeah, the thing that Adam sent to me was the main point that I think like why this reel is so successful is that while raw animation skill is important, the context of the work, especially in game development, can often be more significant. So when you're looking for somebody, you want somebody who has aptitude for the specific things you're looking for, which could just be like, I just need a rock solid animator and those other things don't matter. But if you have the confidence, if you know that those extra skills, you've got them, it can absolutely give you an edge, even if the work isn't top tier. Like the boxing stuff isn't, I don't think that's like glamorous animation work, but because of all those factors that Skylar just talked about, it's like a absolutely stellar piece on the reel.
Yeah, I was curious what you guys think about it, but I feel like before coming here and like running into so many different animators, I thought it was just a straight line to being like senior or principal or lead or whatever. And then after working here, like in day to day, just being surrounded by like 12 different animators, it's like, it to me at least, it seems like everybody has their own like specialty and stuff like that. And they kind of, as you get better and better, you hone that more and more, and you're able to be more skewed in a different path at like a certain level. And I think some people like they're kind of touching on, some people are more execution heavy with like their reel, as far as like, oh, the work is just super, super pristine and polished. And other people rely on other strengths like implementation or camera work and stuff like that. So I don't think there's like a one trick, pony type of situation.
Yeah. Agreed. Any other thoughts about Adam's work? And we'll move on to our final demo reel. And then anybody who can stick around, we have like 6 questions from the chat, but no pressure. All right. Rats in the chat for Adam, who is not with us, but did graciously share his demo reel, which again, that was the reel, obviously, that got him into Riot Games, baby. Kevin Rucker, it's your turn, dog. You want to set
So
us
this
up?
is, oh yeah. So this technically, I added a few things since then. The Riot, when I applied, didn't have this Ahsoka animation or the Warcraft Rumble animals, but the rest of it was on there.
The Ahsoka
But
stuff is so sick.
there you go. That was
All,
done. I'll talk about it more or afterwards.
all right, let's do it to it.
Cool animation that I don't have.
This is the one I see in my sleep sometimes.
I think there's music, but
Oh, it's playing on my end.
okay. Ugh, super old stuff. This is way too long.
2 minutes feels like a long time.
I know.
We're watching the whole thing, so everybody knows how long 2 minutes is exactly.
Too long.
Well, if
Kevin,
it's
it
this
must
good,
be hard to have 2 minutes of such high quality work.
right?
2 minutes of bangers. That's the principal difference.
This stuff is so fun.
Oh, so cute.
So hard.
Oh man, this is so good.
It's either this dinosaur or that one. Stop eating our French plant.
I gotta cut this stuff out.
What else you need? How about
I worked on a movie 16 years ago.
a crow that can talk,
Holds up.
and I teach them phrases that I say. Good morning, honey. But it'll be a little crow talking.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the teaching stuff, the Ahsoka, I did that last year. Those are my last couple of I animate classes.
Those are your
The
teaching animations?
Yeah, these are my demos. So I do in-game. All my classes are demos. So this is a combat demo. This is another one. This is a death demo from Workshop 1. And then summer and December block or October, I did this for my demo.
So when
I
you
think
say a
it,
demo, like how long? Like you just did this live in class over the course of an hour
yeah,
or something?
yeah. There's this one's 5 weeks, so it's 5 weeks with like an hour and a half, and I worked like another hour and a half offline, and I recorded it. So this one, both of these, I have all of it. It took maybe 15 hours or so, 16 hours, 17. So I have all the recording of me doing all of it, which is kind of cool. This is old. This is 2008. So some of this stuff's old. And this 2008, I'm like, but it's you get this stuff on, and I was really proud of it. So stupid stuff like, oh, I made sure the arc on that trunk was just right. That's so dumb. And then this stuff. This is actually my wife's idea to do this. They screamed at each other. They run to this, and then these like frame by framing every single of these tentacles. It was fun.
Yeah, it set you up
Super
for success
silly.
in the future.
This was an acting thing I just did on my own. I was at Ready at Dawn doing a lot of previs and mocap stuff, and I shot reference for this. This is on my Vimeo, the reference when I was in my 20s, I think. So this is really old too, but it was a fun one, and I think I just to have some acting stuff on there. But yeah, it's mainly a lot of World of Warcraft. I was there for 6.5 years. This is on Rumble. Oh no, this stuff was Rumble, and then this was from WoW too.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's it.
So good. Does anybody want to talk about why this is a principal level reel?
I had a question more. How do you go about hiring a principal? I feel like for me at my level, principals and like the principals that I work with, like weekly and stuff like that, they're like magicians of just like all this experience and execution quality and, you know, able to work through problems. How would you even go about hiring a principal? I feel like escalating, you know, within the company of like, oh, senior, and then talking about them being principal and stuff like that makes sense. But like hiring one, I'm like, you just sit there and like, oh, just wow me. And then that's who you
Yeah.
go. Like,
Well, Skylar could talk about that. He hired. I mean, he interviewed me. So at the company, they have different levels of. Well, I don't think it's official. It's unofficial. Um, what I always thought principal was someone who has been doing this for a long time, super senior, fire and forget firefighter thing that doesn't want to be a manager, that just wants to dig holes all day long. And then then I meet Skylar. He's like, there's different types. And the company says there's different types. There's like the mentor type. There's the fire and forget type. Skylar, he does stuff. I have no idea all the technical stuff. I don't do a lot of that. Uh, I mean, I do some engine stuff that I have to, but my love and I think strength is just put me in front of a computer. This is why I was on WoW for so long. Is just like put me in front of a computer with a ton of stuff and I'll get it done super fast. But if it comes to like, oh, how could we make this techie thing? Like, rutro. That stuff's that's I don't do a lot of that. So I'm
I
lucky enough to have. I'm lucky enough to have. Hopefully, like, oh yeah, Kevin will do it. We need something, a bunch of stuff done quickly. He'll do it, and that's my dream job. Is that. But yeah, just go good.
I do think that that is like a really important thing. Like there's that principal level I think can be a bit of an enigma, but there are different ways to do it. You know, to peel back the curtain a little bit. Like I think once you get to that level, it is about the idea that you could be dropped anywhere and immediately have value, be able to onboard quickly and do anything, like do the thing that the team needs you to do and work with anyone. Um, so it's about like your soft skills, absolutely. Because there's a lot of people who are super talented animators. You drag and drop them onto a team, and then they just make a bunch of enemies, and you're like, well, that's not really helping anybody, is it? So those soft skills are super important. But then, like, what those needs are can be like different and valuable. We have two principals in this room. Skylar's principal, super technical, a stellar animator. Kevin, it is totally fine to just be like a stellar animator, and the speed and the value, the quality of your work, your ability to align and execute, like it becomes about sort of just having like intrinsic uh game development philosophies embedded in who you are as a craftsperson. And those are all different ways of providing value. Sometimes there's principals I know who are like pretty good animators, pretty technical, but they're like an additional lead without having reports. They're like a secondary manager who rallies people around them, gives people tutorials, like has that as another front. That's like another way we evaluate sort of principal preparedness is like leaning heavy on that soft skills side, but we don't need another lead. Like that's already filled, that management space is already filled. That doesn't mean we don't need more people who provide that. But it's almost always, I mean, the baseline is exceptional craftability. But that's always the baseline. And whether you're going really ham into just the animation, the tech, the mentorship, there's other levers you can pull that put you in that space.
Yeah, the mentorship is what I've leaned into, doing a lot of the new hire stuff at Blizzard, the intern training, the teaching for a long time. And then stuff I've done here, I've helped people here, just give notes and things. We have a producer on the team that wants to get an animation again and just look at his stuff and give him notes. On the craft side of it is a big joy for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you guys said. I'll tune in. I've maybe hired more principals than anybody at the studio, so I guess I'm a good person to ask for like what are I looking for. And it's really hard. It's really hard for all the reasons is that they both just said, which is like, well, everybody's kind of coming at this from a different angle, and Riot has struggled to like define like what makes a person a principal and what is the principal role, because these people come from all these different backgrounds. But I think that the key quality that I always try to think about when, trying to figure out like, oh, is this person at principal, has a lot to do with like their autonomy and their ability to be a driver on the team. And I know those are like businessy words, but what I mean by that is like, okay, well, you put like a mid on the team, and the expectation is that a mid is going to get given a project. They're going to be kind of told what the project should do, and they're going to execute it really, really well. Then you kind of move to a senior, and you're like, yeah, I could give this senior, they could sort of be like the lead on like an individual project. Like, let's say we give them a champion. My expectation would be they go figure out the problems with that champion. They're pretty autonomous. They like know the, but they're given still the framework of the style and the framework of the project, and they're still working within these bounds. Principals are these sort of like autonomous drivers that I expect when they go on a team. They're not just executing what the team wants, they're telling the team how to do it.
Mhm.
They're inspiring the team to tell you, no, this is the style we're going to do. No, here's how we need to build the tools to actually make the project so that everyone can replicate this style. That comes from a lot of different angles. Like in Kevin's instance, he's a guy you're going to put on a team. He's going to figure out the style. It's going to be executed to the nth degree. He's a 10 billion times the animator from a craft standpoint that I am, and is going to then like teach the people on the team from like a mentorship perspective how to execute that as well. It's going to level up the whole team, right? I'm the kind of person you put on a team as like a first animator, and I'll help you figure out like the back end and how you need to build your animation systems. And I'll build to the best of my ability the animation and show you how it needs to be implemented to make it look like that. And then likewise teach people how to do it, onboard them onto the tools, help them build the tools that they need to do the kind of things they need, right? And so we're kind of coming at the same kind of impact on the team, but from different levels. And I think the most interesting aspect about being a principal is that often, because we are these sort of like specialists in one area, we still frequently need to sort of like quell up some of our gaps on the team with like senior animators or mid animators who kind of like fill in that space, So a good example is on a lot of teams I've been on, I've tried to also hire like a Kevin Rucker type person who's like a really high appealing animator who has like really high quality polish, a good sense of timing. I'm a good animator. I don't want to like talk down on myself, but that kind of level of polish, I'm like, I watched Kevin's reel and it's insane. It like blows my mind. Like all the octopus stuff. I've animated tentacles and I'm very proud of it, but none of it's like at that level, right? And so being able to partner these like sort of specialists with other senior people or even other principals who sort of like make these dream like Avenger teams is like the most exciting part of hiring people for me.
Well, folks, any final statements before we move on and conclude this portion of the stream?
Please teach me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, thank you, Rats, for sharing your work and having such a wonderful discussion. If you've got a dip, because we are a little bit over, please feel free to dip. Does anybody need to go right now? It's okay if you do. I see a hand, but just give a little sign off, Anthony.
I sign off. Okay. I'm Anthony. I'm a mid animator on TFT. Good luck to everybody that applied for the internships. Like, we're going through it, so
Awesome. Are you somebody who wants to be found online?
Oh, sure. I guess I actually got quite a few. I think my email's out there as well, but I'm on Twitter or X and as well as Blue Sky as Anthony Ma 101, and I'm also in the Rat Discord if you can find me. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Anthony.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. Anybody else peacing out, or are y'all staying for question time? Great. Thumbs up for question time. Okay, let me get the document. Here we go. We're gonna start here. Is a demo reel required now? Different. Oh, is the type of demo reel required now different because the job market is more competitive? That's from Grogu Poggers.
I actually
Yeah,
had. Go ahead, JT.
Yeah, just real quick. Yeah, I think it just, as time goes on, it gets more and more competitive, especially as people who've been in the industry start providing educational resources. I feel like it's just going to keep, escalating and escalating. I've seen even in the rat community, like reels over the years get better and better and better. So
Well said. Also, there's something, your mic is like eking this very sharp sound, just FYI. I don't know what
can
it
I
is.
you can come back? Is that all right?
Yep, that's fine. Great. Any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, that was the one question that I kind of had in my brain as I was reading the chat and listening to everybody and watching everything, is that I feel that like an intern level or a mid-level or an associate even today is way different than like even 5 years ago, because the people that are like applying for like even the internships are better at the craft than I am, and they're like 15 years old. Like, it's insane. Like, I do not understand how these people absorb all that information and be able to, like put it into the keyframes. And obviously, like, tools are better today than they were before. And for somebody that's been working, we don't catch up to the tools till a little bit later. But that's something that I think is really interesting. It's like, it does feel that, whatever was intern 10 years ago is like, well, that's what senior level, whatever the interns now are, what they were hiring for seniors 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Like, it just feels like insanity. So yeah.
I mean, I think even the conversation we're having about like some of the newer stuff, like showing your implementation, I think is like a fairly new thing that I felt like a couple of years ago I never saw in a reel. And the first time I saw somebody doing, oh, I swapped out the project animations in Unreal, I was like, whoa, they really did something. It wasn't deep, but they tried, and now it's like, don't even bother unless you're doing it. Doing it for real. And I think that even being something that's changed in the last couple of years of like, show us something to show you care about that side of it. And now it's like, okay, it's gotta be like good though, is like that's the changes about what's competitive. I mean, it's like any competitive space. Trying to be You got to try and be the best of the best, and you will probably never be the best, but you will be great. And never just keep that resilience. Keep that resilience. All
There's
right.
only one Kevin Rucker.
Yeah, that's true. From Captivating Studios, with all the layoffs going around the industry, how can a junior like me be able to make it through when we have more qualified animators that have been in the industry for years?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I always try to ask leads and hiring managers and seniors. And I think this is a great place to ask, why would you ever hire an associate if you could just hire somebody better, like, with better execution skills and stuff?
I've got thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
I got
Um,
thoughts. Oh, go ahead.
oh, Kevin, you
No, no, go ahead.
okay. Um, First of all, like for internships and junior level roles, it is possible to be overqualified. If I see somebody who is a senior level reel and they're applying for an associate level role, I'm not giving it to them. That's not what I'm looking for. Maybe I see somebody's reel who's like so good that they're an opportunity hire that they must be on the team. But what happens is I change the level of the role. So that I think is a possibility. Um, but typically, I think you're looking for an associate level role for a couple of reasons. Once you start getting like further and further along in your career, there are expectations that come along with that of like what you need to be providing to the team. And sometimes you don't need more people providing a billion things to the team. Sometimes you need people to just do the work. And that's the expectation of somebody who's new. But somebody who's like senior principal level, be like, sit here and do the animation, please. They're going to have a bad time. It's going to be bad for them. It's going to be bad for the team. It's going to be bad for the company. They're being bored and they're going to feel underutilized because they are. And it's an opportunity space because you get somebody with a really solid quality animation and they need like to be spin up and like get onboarded into like the engine, or they need like mentorship, but they will be so happy to do that animation. And so it's a better fit. Uh, uh, and building that kind of succession in and making sure you don't have a super top heavy team. If you have a really top heavy team, I'll point to your team that probably's got quite a bit of friction on it. because there's a lot of opinions floating around because there's an expectation that you're bringing an opinion. And so it's not like, oh, associates come in and don't have opinions, but the eagerness to learn and the thing that will actually be most beneficial to them is not trying to steer the direction of the game. It will be to learn how to animate and use the tools. And so it just is a better partnership. Kevin, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, people without experience don't have bad habits from other places, for
True.
one. And you have to hire associates because you can't afford a bunch of seniors. And the team is, and you have to sort of pay it forward. You have to give juniors a chance. I mean, I look at what I did now, and I just think about when I started or when I was in school. I graduated college. I'm going to get a job at Pixar. Like, no, with my box bounces and stuff. I mean, you have to give people a chance to learn and grow, and then they will get better if they keep going and practice. Um, but as far as like how do I get a job over like my first job, I got a job. It took me a year to get a job outside of college, and I got a job at Sony through a friend. Helped me get this job at Sony in Northern California. I had it for 3 months. I got laid off. So I was super junior trying to get a new job. So I had some experience. But someone who has no experience as a junior could have had just as good or even a better reel than me. Um, 'Cause I had still school stuff. I had some professional stuff on there, which is good to see, but it doesn't make you that much better than someone who doesn't have. So you get a job over the next junior by being better.
Yeah.
Really. Look up junior reels and see, this is my reel. Is my reel this good? And if it's
Hmm.
not, then you got stuff to work on.
Yeah. Ben Wolcott Schickler sort of had a partner question to that, where it's like, how do I not get passed over by people who have industry experience? And one of the things I would shout out is one of Tyler's answers from earlier, like being wary of like a dream studio and being like, this is the only studio I'll apply for. One of the things that you can do is get experience. It doesn't have to be Riot. It doesn't have to be Epic. It doesn't have to be Blizzard. It can be little indie studio where you're gaining experience and gaining anecdotes that you can talk about in an interview. So all of the things Kevin said of like why we hire for associate roles and like why you can expect not to get passed over, but you can also not get passed over by building up your repertoire for different experiences that you have. It's always that forward momentum of just if it's not working, something's got to give. And the thing you have control over is yourself getting better.
One last thing
Go for it.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to add is when I asked this before, I think to my mentor at Kyosol, he had mentioned that part of the ways that some people grow, I guess, when they're mid, senior, and stuff like that, is by mentoring other people, and it helps them become better leaders. So I think that's also a reason why you might hire associates and mids and stuff.
Massive plus one. Massive plus one. Great point. Brendan, you had one thing to add, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I think that the last kind of thing that I would see as a positive is that once you've been working for a bit, you kind of learn the tool set that works for you, and you're kind of like established, and you're like, okay, these tools work for me to do my day to day. And you don't really look at like outside of the box stuff. And juniors are always like up to date with the most tools. They're in college ping ponging around the new hype tech. So like they're just gonna know the sharpest tools out there, and they just keep you fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it.
Down to clown. I love that. So we have a question here from Luis the animator. When the Riot animation team is looking for an animator, what can somebody expect to find in the application? A pretty clinical answer, but you can expect to apply online. There's like a big career portal. Every application starts there pretty much. So you can I forget exactly what it's like, but having your demo reel accessible, either put the password in your application materials somewhere so somebody can access it, or make sure that the password is off of it. So you can expect to be able to link your demo reel. I would make sure that you link the demo reel and not upload it. Um, if you have social media handles or someplace where you like do have a blog or you are posting videos that are like your process updates, it'll ask you for like a personal website, or like if you just have your Vimeo account that has a bunch of reels on it, like you can just put those things in there. Um, a cover letter, you can expect to have to write a cover letter. And I think cover letters are unsung heroes of applications where you need your resume. That's your point form list of all the things that you did. It's a tactical presentation. A cover letter is one of your only opportunities outside of your work to share your personality. It shouldn't be as too zany. It's like very annoying where it's like, well, don't be too crazy, but don't be too fanboy, but don't be too bland. But like, show your best, but still most professional self, but don't be afraid to talk about your soft skills. What are the things, like if it's just a long form resume, we don't love that. But you need a cover letter, you need a resume, you need a link to your reel. Your reel should be accessible, and that's about it. If you get to like another level, you could expect a craft screen where you talk with somebody about your work and you should be prepared to talk through your demo reel. Occasionally, you'll have to take an art test. There's another question about that that I can talk about a bit later. And then there's like an on-site where you talk with a bunch of different people about different topics, sort of relating to game development. And then you'll a decision point. So that is what you can expect. Anything to add? Oh, cool. All right. Afternoon Eye says everyone says to fit your animation to the studio you're applying to, but as a junior, you have to apply to so many different places until you get in. What should you do? Should our reel have so many different styles in the reel?
Mine does.
Yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't hurt to have a lot of different stuff as long as some of it is catered to. I mean, when we're talking about catering it to the studio, I think it's more important that you're like not just missing a whole category of stuff that they're going to be interested in. I rarely see the opposite problem. I mean, you saw some of these reels, there was like good variety in there that would probably appeal to like a lot of different studios, you know, like some people had like first person stuff even in reels that they were applying for like League of Legends and stuff, and that's totally fine, I think. So I would never discourage some from having some like a general purpose game reel. I think the thing that's worse is to just not have game stuff on it at all, or be like a totally like cinematics focused reel when applying to a game 2 studio. Or let's say you're applying to League of Legends, I wouldn't necessarily submit like a reel that's like all first person animation to League of Legends
Or
because it's all
mocap.
you do, or all mocap, right? But it's totally fine to have that stuff on there, to just have like a general purpose reel that you can send around for sure.
Brendan?
No, yeah, I agree.
Great. One of the things that I used to do was it wasn't like a fully new reel, but I had like 2 or 3 that had most of the same pieces. And then I had like 1 or 2 pieces that I would switch out depending on who I was applying to. So it wasn't like I had 3 entirely different reels. But if I wanted something that had a mocappy flavor, I would send that to a mocappy studio. For something like Blizzard or Riot, I didn't put any of that on there because I know that wasn't a part of their processes. So it doesn't showing a little bit of interest, and again, always with that caveat of like show all the different styles you want in a reel, but you should better be sure that they're all good. That's like the common line, I would say.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead,
I would
JT.
say yeah, definitely trying to I suggest personally like targeting the studios, but like Len is saying, like as you build up a body of work and even just keep applying, you'll be building up new shots. And if you're targeting different studios, you'll have that variety. And then I know when I was applying, I would, once I had that repository, and especially now, like I would look at the resume or the application that and what they're looking for and select some shots and put them there. And you can always make new work as well. So if there's a really, I used to look at the top studios that I really like. I would like look at, like 30 different studios at once and be like, okay, what are the ones I really want to work for? Cool. What work do I have that, connects and resonates with what they're doing? And I'd make sure that was on there. And if not, I would make new work. And then the other ones would be like, all right, well, hopefully we'll be fine with, more generic stuff or less targeted stuff. So.
Yeah. Well said. Pretty simple one here from That Chaos. Would you say that there's any value in actually rendering the shot for a nicer look, or play blasts perfectly fine?
I've always just play blasted stuff. It feels like a pencil test, you know. But rendering isn't bad. It just again, it goes back to like when I was younger. If it's gonna take time away from animating, how much time am I gonna set up to do lights? And if you are gonna, just like a camera, if you're gonna have a camera, make it look good. If you're gonna have lighting, make it look really good. Unless you can kind of download a pre-lit scene, but we'll look past all that. We don't
Yeah.
care.
If you're still in school, like if you wanted something, like it's nice. You can, and you have like a lighting department at your school. Sometimes it's good to be like, I have a cool animation. Do you want it for your assignment? Light it, and then you get like a nicely lit thing for free. Helping, and they get something cool and not boring to show in their reel.
Yeah, that's what I did, I think. But I like having my stuff like presentable to some extent. Like I used to do previs for work, so I know how to like make Play Blast look like they're a little more expensive than regular Play Blast, but and it's pretty easy to do. So that's like my bare minimum, but it's also like a procrastination tool of like, oh, I finished this piece and I don't want to start another one quite yet. So I'm just gonna massage this one out with lights and whatever. And then like as an art piece, I'm always like, okay, what's the focus of this? Do I put like where am I gonna put the light to make sure that I showcase this in the best way possible? But that's just an exercise that I do for it that I can respect. I mean, like Kevin's reel is just amazing, and it's all Play Blast. So I don't think it matters.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm gonna go the Pro Doom. What should you put on a resume if this is your first job in animation?
I mean, your previous
Work
work
experience.
that was in animation,
Some of the
or a
things,
blank sheet of paper if it's your first job ever. I don't know.
if it's your first job in animation, first of all, I think this is an interesting thing. Your resume should not be longer than a page, certainly. It really shouldn't. Put only your most applicable experience. If your most applicable experience is like you worked at a restaurant, there are things about working at a restaurant that are applicable to working with people at a game dev studio. You should think about the things that made that job something that makes you a good person to work with. I was a hostess at a restaurant. Let me tell you, I had to learn them people skills real bad. That's important. I also think like it's okay to put on a resume about not like your school assignments that you did, but your school projects. And so that's why it's very important to be like in collaborative projects with people and seek out those opportunities because it's not like paid experience. But if you're like, oh, I collaborated with this lighter, we worked together to create a scene, and you can talk about that experience, that counts as work experience. The paycheck does not count as work experience. The work experience counts as work experience. It's great if it's like a paid job that somebody's paid you to do something. It sort of like validates you to the next person who might want to do that. But I think all of those are totally fair game. But also, uh, did you take a special class? Uh, I took like a no, that wouldn't be a count, but like I took special classes in school with special teachers that you had to like apply to get into that class. The school I went to had quote unquote Pixar classes that you had to apply with a demo reel, and they would select you for that class to be taught by the animators that worked at Pixar. That to me counts as work experience. My work was good enough that I was selected for this special opportunity. So, special classes, mentorship, your educational experience. So, if you've done university like a bachelor's, your animation mentor, I animate, all those things I think are totally valid to put on your resume. But it doesn't have to be super long. It's okay if it's only like 3 things.
I had a question where if somebody, like, for example, is just, let's say they're Kevin Rucker level, but they don't have a lot of work experience. They just make a lot of personal work, and that came down your lane. Like, how would you how would that go? Like, how much of this is getting past the HR screening with your resume versus like when you're hiring, for example, how much emphasis do you put on the resume versus the reel, I guess is kind of what I'm asking.
I have never been asked about anything on my resume other than yo-yoing, and in reviewing things, I have almost never looked at the resume more than a cursory glance. It like that HR screen, they're looking at the demo reels, and like the big things we look for in resumes of being like, why, like more senior levels, especially like big gaps in work experience, you're like looking for red flags more than you're looking for like, oh, so you went to Yale and now you're like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, same. I mean, I've interviewed a ton of people at Riot over the years, and the main thing I'm looking at the resume for is like question fodder that's interesting. Is like, I see you worked at here. Tell me about like a specific example from there. If I kind of know some project that they worked on, or another thing that's often interesting on Reels is, oh, like you did something totally different before this. Like, how does that, is that like, why'd you decide to do this instead? And has that had any impact on like your animation stuff now? Those end up kind of being interesting topics. But I would say I'm with Lana. I'm like, I've never like picked or not picked somebody based on like their actual paper resume. It's always about the reel. It's like the reel is like number one thing.
All right. I feel like we could answer questions all night, but I've got three. These are the last ones. If you have more questions, please go to the Discord, or if for some reason you don't have Discord access, you should get at the Rat Animators on Blue Sky. I know there's a bird up there. Pretend it's a butterfly. We're on Blue Sky. So, last three questions. One I'm going to tackle really quick, which is how common are art tests either in the industry or at Riot? Are they more common for associate roles than for seniors? Um, uh, I I don't think there's I don't think Riot has a particular like specific overall stance on what art tests are. I think they're fairly common in the industry, but getting less common. I know, I mean, several of us talked about like our art tests for Riot games in this call. I had an art test, JT had an art test. Tyler, did you have an art test? I think we all did. Um, but Brendan, did you have an art test? No.
No.
So there's not like a global need. I think typically you can expect to see art tests, especially in those associate level roles, um, if there's like a concern about like your speed, where the things that are in your demo reel are like, that's definitely showing it. But as a student, especially, it's like, but did that one animation take you 15 weeks to do? Well, that's not the timeline that we have exactly. So it's sort of testing that a little bit. My personal philosophy on art tests is like if I can't get that information from a demo reel in a conversation, there's nothing else I'm going to learn in an art test personally. And so that's my philosophy. But sometimes when there are like outstanding concerns or like a specific like, oh, I didn't see our specific style in your thing and I just want to see you push a pose or like whatever it is, sometimes we'll give them out. But I do think limited in the industry. It's very, I mean, team over team versus studio over studio it's very different. Um, Second last question from Connor Dex. Aside from what an artist puts on their portfolio, uh, what draws the attention of hiring teams for animation positions? And I will add, if anything.
Say that again. What? Say it again. The last part.
Aside from what an artist puts in their portfolio, what draws the attention of hiring teams for animation positions? And then I added, if anything.
Well, I think that if go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
No, you.
I think
Uno reverse.
if you get to a conversation spot and you've passed all of your like, okay, we know this person can do the job, then it becomes a thing of, oh, is this person nice to be around and interact with, because you're going to be doing that more than you are with the rest of other people in your life. So that is very important. Yeah.
Well, to that end, I think like something. Oh, Skylar, you go. You were going to say something.
No, go ahead. If you're going to talk
Oh
about
my
this topic, feel free.
Yeah, I think that like to that end, like that personality piece can come first. So if you are in like public spaces, you are volunteering at a conference per se, or maybe you did a talk like on behalf of your school somewhere. Somebody might see you talk or engage with you in some way in like, oh, we went to a meetup thing and they just liked your vibe. And they might then dig in and be like, well, this person seemed awesome and they were an animator. I gotta check out their reel because I think they would get along really well with what our team culture has. Like you spend 8 to 10 hours a day with these people. Um, you want people who you gel really well with. Like that's just you want people that not necessarily like, oh, a new best friend, like somebody that you could probably comfortably joke around with and at least comfortably talk to. And so sometimes just like the personality that you bring, it can be the first stop before the portfolio actually gets seen.
I was going to kind of take a little bit of a different spin. Is that I usually like when I'm looking at a person's work, it's because I'm like prepping to interview them. So I've kind of been screened by like recruiting already, and so I get a reel and whatnot for part of that process. But I usually go snoop around on the internet and try to find the person and see what's out there, and so. I'm not looking for, I'm not looking for bad stuff. In fact, it's the opposite. I mean,
looking for bad stuff.
Hopefully I'm not looking for it. Yeah, bad stuff, we're looking. But no, I mean, a lot of times I'll like stumble on like a Vimeo page or something, and there's like cool shots on there that they like didn't put in their reel. That's always kind of fun and interesting to talk about. And I'll have to bring that up in an interview, like, oh, why'd you choose not to put this thing on there? Or maybe there's some earlier work that was like really creative but not as high quality. That's often good conversation information. But like one thing that I see occasionally that is just nice to see is like I frequently run across people who have like posts about their like own interesting making crafting stuff, and I always find that like this isn't always true, so I don't want to like generalize, but many of the best like game developers and animators I've ever worked with tend to just be like bakers and crafters and people who are like interested in like doing and making stuff. And so that's always something that I'm always kind of like, oh yeah, this is like a person who's going to be like an experimenter and a mad scientist people, and they're those are always kind of interesting characters to encounter that kind of stuff when I'm kind of like poking around. And then that'll kind of be like stuff that I'll talk to them about in the interview, because all that stuff is wrapped up in the like world of like being creative, and the most creative people tend to be like the best game developers. That's just kind of what it comes down to. So
I did want to tack on a little bit with that and some of the personality stuff. I remember back when I was going through like that hiring period I was talking about, I was looking up on like Reddit and stuff, and like figuring out like, oh, how do you present yourself in the best way? And there's some people, as Redditors do, just complaining, and they were like, oh, they like people who are active in inactivities. What, I gotta do hiking now? I gotta do mountain biking to get a job? And it's like, it was crazy like that, where I'm like, Jesus. And what I learned after going through the process here was that it sounds corny, but like, just be yourself. Like Skylar was saying about like your own creativity and stuff like that, where in my interview, I talked about like me doing some writing stuff, and my hiring manager was like, oh, dude, that would totally fit the job because this and that. And the funny thing about it is, I remember when I was in my academy, we had a guest come in who did a lot of hiring. He was a lead animator. He worked at Blizzard for a time and on Overwatch and stuff. And I had at that time writing on my resume, like, oh, I do writing, and not professionally, I just write on my own and do this type of stuff. And he looked me dead in the eyes, like brought the entire conversation to a halt. And he's like, I have never hired an animator for their writing ability. And like, this guy was so stern that my mentor, who was inviting me as a guest, was like, I mean, he's just saying like, hey, like to calm things down and stuff. But yeah, I think that's a good dichotomy example of like, it really depends on where you go and and what people value and stuff like that, where one lead valued writing and one was like, I never want to see this, so just be yourself and let your creativity lead the way.
So it depends on how much of a discerning jerk the person hiring you is. We're all really nice here.
Sorry. Okay, I have to derail this, or I will say some spicy commentary. Oh my goodness. So the last question that we're going to, because I think it is, sorry, I'm still laughing. But I think it's very nice and it's a happy question to end on is from Sarika underscore. Yeah. We all continue to move forward and grow. But do you all still sometimes reminisce about your favorite past projects?
I don't know if it means personal projects or past jobs, but I had yes. Usually I'm very forward thinking, but like I thinking back to when I was on an indie team of like 5 people, like that is the dream. Like don't get me wrong, I love Riot, but working on a huge game with a big team is way different than working on a small team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, every oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, every once in a while, I feel like I'll go back down memory lane and like look through my work and stuff, and it ends up being like a rabbit hole. Like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing that. And sometimes I'll see stuff where I'm like, what was I thinking when I made this? Like positive or negative? Like, where was my headspace at? And oh yeah, I remember I did that. And sometimes I'll even learn like new techniques and stuff based on how I used to work and stuff like that. Or I'll see shots that I didn't even remember that I made, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I do it from time to time.
I've worked on a couple projects that I really loved over the years that got canceled, and it crushes me because a couple of them were like my dream projects. But I always try to like just what you said. There's always something that can be like learned from that and brought on to the next thing. So when I frequently like whenever that's happened and it canceled, I try to like, this is a bad way to put it, but I like pick over the corpse of the thing to like see what like how much of this can I like peel off and take forward, you know what I mean? And some of the like best tools and my biggest learnings have been from projects that I loved that got canceled. And then the next time I did that same kind of thing, I got to do it in like a cooler or better way because of that. And so it's easy to be like nostalgic about things, but as long as the nostalgia doesn't get in the way of moving forward, I think that's like an important piece of that. It's like the game industry sucks and a lot of stuff gets canceled. And yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, looking
Yeah,
at
early.
looking at this reel. Oh, go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think back fondly of the time. It was my second job technically that moved us down to Southern California. I had a guy, Paul Belmore. I think he's still at ID, and he basically taught me how to animate. And the workflow that I use today is what I learned from him. This 2005, and I haven't changed much since then. But those were some amazing times. No kids. It was my 20s. We had Disneyland passes. We'd go all the week. It was just a great. The game was canceled eventually, but I was only there for like a year, and then I went to Ready at Dawn. But those were some good times. Great team. Yeah.
My story's boring, so stop.
I reminisce all the time. I mean, especially now, I have a good buddy, Matthew Parker, who was not working on my team for a long time, but I worked with him at Blizzard on Heroes of the Storm for like 5 years. And I mean, we just mess with each other all of the time. And coming over to Riot was one of those things, being like, ah, miss you, brother. And then when I started on a project, I eventually moved to a different project. Um, Parker was my backfill, but we still like never got to like sort of work together again. And recently, Parker joined our team, and now I'm like working with my buddy again. And let me tell you, it's a combination of like we're making memories and also constantly think like in our one-on-ones of like now I'm like, no, I'm your boss. It's like very funny, but talking about different things and different experiences. Even just this week, I was down in LA and we got together in like the PC bong or the PC sort of arcade on Riot campus, and we sat down and he's like, so we're gonna play a couple rounds of Heroes of the Storm or what? And sure enough, we sat down and played some ARAMs. And so I very much think of those days and the times on that team that were like very sweet. And just like a lot of other folks, like the lessons that I learned about myself and my sensibilities and my preferred like leadership style and like the people I learned from and felt. I feel like the core of who I am right now, I was able to learn and embrace because I was on that team. And I'm it's not just like nostalgia and memories. It feels like an uh indiscernible part of the fabric of my being. And so great question, Sarika underscore yeah. Thank you so much for asking. And thanks, everybody. Thanks to the rats and thanks to everybody hanging out with us today. Can we get some rats in the chats while we do a quick round of sign offs? What's your name? And if you want to be found online, where can people do that? Let's go the same order as before if anybody remembers it.
Was I first?
You were.
I am on LinkedIn. I think I'm still. I should do a Blue Sky. I'm on X, but I'm mostly on LinkedIn. So you find me there. And if you want to find me, say that you were in the chat. I get a lot of connection requests, and I'll filter through and then accept a lot of these. And then yeah, you can hit me up.
Beauty.
You can find me on Instagram at Brendan Animate, and I'll be migrating. I'm migrating to Blue Sky as well. Brendan Animate as well. Brendan Animate everywhere.
If you want to find me, I'm in LA. My address, you can find me in the Discord, the Rat Discord. I'm Flapjack. If you want real feedback on your reel or just have a question, feel free to tag me. I'm always down.
Is that me?
Skylar, I think.
I guess it's me. Yeah, I'm Skylar. You can't find me much anywhere because I don't want people who are going to interview me looking and finding bad stuff about me. No, just kidding. No, really, I just don't have a lot of social media, but I am on LinkedIn. And if you shoot me, same as Kevin, if you actually shoot me like a direct message on there, you can connect with me. And someday when I actually am able to post something that I worked on, I'll post it on the internet somewhere. So you'll be able to find me then. Oh yeah, I do have my Agora tutorial. Somebody just mentioned in the chat. If you want to learn Unreal, there's a bunch of free tutorials that I made with Agora that I think a lot of people have found really fun and interesting. So go check that out. It's free. I don't get anything from it. It's just fun, good stuff.
Cool. Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, LinkedIn as well. Same as everybody else. Please, dear God, say how you found out about me or that you're in the rat community and stuff. Because yeah, I get like I swear bot messages and stuff and there, and I just decline those. So if you reach out to me on there, send a DM message and stuff like that, and you can also see me in the chat. I'm JTZ Koza, so that's me. Feel free to DM me on there. And same thing, because I also get bot requests from other channels. So just, hey, I'm from the rat community, saw you here, and stuff like that. So always down to chat and some questions and things like that. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And once again, my name is Lana Bashinsky. You can find me on the internet at Latieni. That's Latienie. I also do I'm not getting into that. I also tweet on behalf of the Rat or monitor the Rat account at ratanimators.bluesky.com. I don't actually know what the whole thing is. It's Rat Animators on Blue Sky. You'll find us. We've got our Discord account, our Discord server. I'm also in there at Riot Latieni, so you can definitely tag me on there for things. Do you have thoughts about what our next stream should be? Do you want to ask us questions? We have a great AMA channel in there that we post the questions and then we pull all of the answers into the answers channel. So if you just want to see answers to questions, you can just go back because only the rats can post in the answers channel. And I think that's about it, folks. Thanks everybody for coming, for kicking off our streaming year of 2025. And we'll see you next time. Until then.